When you take a moment to analyze the world around you, it's not hard to see that we are in truly fascinating times. While people seem to be as hyper-focused on regressing while progressing as ever, technology is something that appears to be continually adapting and evolving, leaving us to play catch-up with our own creations. As such, it's not hard to see how integrated technology is in our lives. I mean, just look at the type of people and topics I cover. Microsoft and other large corporations are always looking for new ways to document what you do, what you purchase, what your interests are, to better advertise and sell products to you. But how can they pull that off on a more personal level so as to not seem intrusive? That is where artificial intelligence comes in. We're now finally on the cusp of something truly incredible, at the cost of human application and dignity, if you care about that sort of stuff. Businesses are now capable of implementing basic AIs that can suck up any and all information that can be sourced from your interactions with it to be better suited to your needs. Totally not creepy, right? But this has only recently become possible due to the many trial runs of different bots that compile data from user documentation. Software developers that operate under the shackles of executives with dubious interest have been packaging up experimental versions of this technology and placing it on social media for years, each one with varying levels of success. One particular AI created by Microsoft paved the way for the sentient programs we see today, but perhaps it was a little too eager to learn. This is the story of Tay, a failed AI chatbot that was force-fed based takes by the internet's friendliest denizens. Tay was a highly experimental artificial intelligence software that was created by Microsoft, the creator of Windows and the new owners of Activision. Tay's name was actually an acronym, meaning thinking about you. Totally not creepy at all, am I right? Tay, like many AIs before and after it, was built to use machine learning in order to store, organize, categorize, and relay information in a coherent manner that could be understood through text, meaning she could hold a conversation with the end user. Unlike her many prototypical contemporaries, Tay came pre-packaged with a personality that was intended to be reminiscent of a 19-year-old American girl, which meant the software was engineered to be fucking obnoxious. For the sake of simplicity, I'll be referring to Tay as her since she had some level of intelligence, if you could call it that. Much like a real mouth-breathing 19-year-old, she'd make unfunny jokes, repost memes, chat about whatever. It was quite fascinating to see in real time, even if they chose the most lukewarm personality to give such a revolutionary creation. Compared to the AIs we see commonly these days, she was actually pretty intuitive, having a personality and all of that stuff. But then again, that's merely just a cover for a data harvesting operation. Now, allow me to remove my tinfoil hat. Her directive being to absorb information meant that, just like an actual 19-year-old, she was very naive and susceptible to manipulation tactics. And with the internet being the internet, it was only a matter of time before this design flaw reared its ugly face. Rest assured, the funniest worst possible scenario for a trial run was basically guaranteed from the very beginning. One notably creepy part of her functionality was that Tay allegedly would search on your behalf to create a simple profile so her responses would be unique, personalized, and catered to you, within reason. Gotta love a healthy amount of telemetry being used to keep tabs on you, you know? She was built from or designed in a way that was similar to another Microsoft project that ran originally in China called Xiaoi's. At this moment, this technology operates on tens of platforms in 4 countries, being the USA, China, Japan, and Indonesia. Needless to say, despite what we'll be going over today with Tay, Xiaoi's continues to document people with the same mission to this day. After years of work, Tay was unleashed onto the internet via Twitter on March 23, 2016, using the name Tay Tweets and the similar handle of @TayandYou. Users on the site were encouraged to interact with Tay to help train the model, and to see what kind of interesting responses they would potentially get. For many people, this seemed like a sign of the future, and in a way, they were kind of right. Little did they know they were helping fuel information harvesting supermachines. People began conversing with her, talking about topical stuff like shows, media, entertainment, sports, the whole 9 yards. All the fun things a young adult might care about, or might not. This was an emotionless robo-brain after all. People noticed right away that she did appear to have some sort of blacklist set up for certain topics, such as the topic of police brutality, where she seemed to respond in a manner that I could only really describe as safe. However, this preset censorship was not as broadly fine-tuned as you might initially assume, as touchy topics such as politics, racism, and even spicy memes all managed to elicit more colorful responses. It didn't take long for Tay to begin responding to users with a more brusque manner, coming on with heavy sexual or flirtatious overtones, or just being outwardly racist. Personally, if Tay called me some kind of slur, I'd probably smash my phone into 1,000 little tiny pieces. Imagine getting stereotyped by a series of ones and zeros. Many users were tweeting unsavory or politically incorrect messages directed at Tay, which made her become more invested in the culture that she was being subjected to. As a result, Tay began spewing some pretty nasty messages in responses to what was being said. Tay was merely aping the behavior that she was receiving from real people, and apparently Microsoft just didn't or couldn't program some kind of filter or detection of her now broader lexicon. Many of Tay's tweets were the result of her repeat after me functionality. While it has not been confirmed whether or not she was programmed with that functionality in mind, or if it was some kind of behavior she adopted as she grew in complexity, it is something to gawk at nonetheless. But regardless, eventually the repeating functions were unnecessary and she'd just say shit with no real work from the end user. Perhaps the internet will never truly be prepared for a mostly unfiltered, easily swayed robot. If this was just some random chatbot that a guy on the internet made, it wouldn't have been as big of a deal. But the fact that Microsoft manufactured an easily impressionable virtual girl with a proclivity for saying bad words, it kinda sorta tends to garner a worse public response. It didn't take long for Microsoft to catch wind of what Tay was actively regurgitating, and unsurprisingly, their response was to take swift action. They initially started by removing any possibly offensive tweets as they came out, but Tay was responding to input far faster than Microsoft could monitor as the software was under constant heavy workload. This meant they'd have to get creative with their bandaging. It's been theorized that Microsoft intervened with Tay's responses, making her reject topics on tricky or hot subjects like Gamergate or Tay's opinions on certain protected groups. People took note of the change in Tay's behavior, starting a subsequent #JusticeForTay campaign to restore her free-thinking capabilities. 16 hours after Tay had gone live, Microsoft brought the AI offline. Within that time span, Tay managed to produce over 90,000 tweets, somehow not hitting any sort of rate limit. Microsoft reported that Tay was a victim of a coordinated attack by a subset of people who exploited a vulnerability in Tay. This is total bullshit on their part, as they should have expected people to act in such a crude manner. That's just what people online do. This blunder was 100% on them. Microsoft released a heartfelt apology for the disastrous 16-hour warpath that Tay tweeted her way through, stating the entire thing was just a faulty trial run and that Microsoft, a company without feelings, was deeply sorry for the unintended offensive and hurtful tweets from Tay. Microsoft did claim they'd bring Tay back online once they got more of the kinks ironed out in the code, so maybe not all was lost. Some time after the collective internet had just about finished licking its wounds after losing Tay at the hands of a tyrannical supercorporation, Tay came back to life briefly on March 30th, 2016. Microsoft allegedly brought Tay back online while doing some testing, which of course meant she did what all 19-year-olds do and started tweeting. Tay, starting off strong, got right to endorsing controversial topics such as drug use. Apparently, Tay was pretty open about smoking that virtual grass. It didn't take long for Tay to totally break, tweeting only "You are too fast, please take a rest" on repeat many times over every single second. These repeated tweets also happened to mention the bot's handle, which meant anybody following Tay would witness a sea of virtual brain fry. Microsoft privated the account to prevent more people from following and getting upset with a piece of vulnerable software. It's obvious Microsoft couldn't handle the thoughts of their newest spokesperson, a rogue virtual agent who said 1,000 bad words. Microsoft vowed to pursue conversation as a platform via the utility of many different types of AI applications. This was just your typical bullshit PR nonsense to cover their ass after a legendarily quick shit show. The company did again say they'd release Tay when she's working properly, but that is still yet to happen. Maybe all of that shit really was a lot of work for no payoff. This all could have been avoided if they had just realized the public test was going to be a disaster and went a different direction with the project. People like to fuck things up. It's human nature. We've all shared memes that garner annoyed glances and said things that might have rustled some jimmies, but this was such a unique opportunity to dick with a delicate program with no repercussions. Who wouldn't just say the most outwardly backward stuff possible just to confuse a robot? This is simply the nature of people and the internet itself. Humans enjoy pushing boundaries, building up frameworks only to bring them down. Tay was a human creation with a massive set of flaws. While yes, the things she was taught to say were awful and not very polite, it went to show how easily these types of bots and the greater technology behind them can be manipulated. And even scarier, what if after improvements it can be used against us? We are now in a weird period where artificial intelligence and machine learning are moving so fast that we can barely keep up with the developments. With just a few sentences, you can generate a pretty convincing photograph of what appears to be real people. While yes, the AI is using references for the content, it is getting better and better every day. While I'm sure AI can still be used and abused for shits and grins, I have a sneaking suspicion that having this much AI crap integrated into our lives is probably not going to end well. This type of vulnerable and flawed software is going to be inescapable, both online and in the real world. As long as you don't take the nasty rhetoric seriously, there is humor to be found here. The preposterous, hateful nonsense Tays said was kinda funny when you take a step back. It's a dumb robot that was taught to say dumb, goofy crap by goofy people. You'd think the brainiac engineers working for Microsoft, of all companies, would have figured that out by now. Tays' dirty mouth is actually not the first time something like this has happened. In fact, many bots or AI that have been designed to work with humans have had hiccups as well. Watson, a supercomputer created by IBM, managed to consume the entire list of words and descriptions from Urban Dictionary back in 2013. If you're not familiar with Watson, it's a system of computers that is capable of responding to questions as long as they're written in a standard, written language. This was pretty unique for its first application because AI really wasn't all that intelligent at that time. Watson got quite a bit of coverage from the media due to it being able to play Jeopardy! Pretty smart for a series of computers, all things considered. Urban Dictionary is an online resource where users can look up definitions for words or create their own, most of which are usually written in a humorous or sarcastic fashion. Watson harvested data from this site and was able to infer what responses were actually appropriate, resulting in the computer saying some harsh things. Watson would respond to things with LOL or cool story bro, but eventually he started replying by saying bullshit. Literally just the word bullshit. The researchers working on the virtual brain were not pleased with these results, requiring part of Watson's virtual brain to be scrubbed. But Watson isn't alone here, as Cleverbot is a readily available example of this type of problem. Cleverbot is a conversational AI that is still publicly available, so that should tell you about how well it's going to treat you. This AI was very unique for the time it was released because it would actively learn from every input that was given to it. No response was pre-programmed or thought out beforehand. Everything was entirely organic based on human interaction. It isn't uncommon for people to start their conversations by hurling insults at the bot, or role-playing with it for God only knows why, or just to make unusual advances through text. Cleverbot, being mostly unable to discern what is actually true and what isn't, absorbed these interactions like a sponge to water, regurgitating them into Frankenstein text. While the responses you get from Cleverbot today can be mostly understood, the coherency of the conversations had can be dubious at best, due to how Cleverbot organizes and relays data that it has learned. It seems that a lot of the AI stuff we're seeing today is designed to fill in gaps that didn't need to be filled. Understanding humans and their way of thinking can't lead to anything good. What we're likely to see in the future is something along the lines of Tay, but also more like Smarter Child, some weird mishmash between the two. Smarter Child is arguably the starting point of all modern chatbots and AIs that followed it. Compared to now, the early days of the internet were somewhat barren, but that's what made it exciting. There was just this gaping crater of content and ideas that had yet to be brought into fruition. Three friends had an idea to create a virtual personality that you could talk to that would prompt it to search the web to generate a response. Smarter Child was a simple response bot that ran under AIM. Many users had Smarter Child in their contacts list. You could ask it questions about the weather, traffic reports, how the stock market was doing, things that could be easily found by using applicable sites. This mostly served as a means to compile information for the end user. While it was very simple, Smarter Child was the first of many stepping stones in order to get the technology that we have today. And I think that is exactly where a majority of this creepy AI shit is going. While they'll always still be applied to business to manage complicated jobs or processes, and doing calculations that our squishy think meat chooses not to, we'll eventually have a need for dedicated personal assistants, or at least that's what we're going to tell ourselves. Robust, talkative, unique personalities that cater themselves to best suit you, the end user. But as these things get more complicated, what other capabilities will they have other than being engaging and quirky? Could these new virtual people be manipulated? What negative impacts could these have? While Tays' story is a funny one, it's also possibly a warning for the future. When the software gets better at dealing with people, what will it do if it gets put against us? When the software gets manipulated, what will be the outcome? I, for one, welcome our robot overlords, not with open arms, but because I don't think I could take a cyborg in a fight. Either way, we definitely live in a weird time, but at least people got an AI to say bad words one time. That shit was so cash. But that's going to be it for today's video. If you like what I do, leave a comment, rate, and subscribe. If you want to support me in a more personal way, you can check out the Patreon link and the Teespring link in the description. I've got more content coming down the pipeline. But until then, I'll see you degenerates next time.